I'm Ryan McMorrow from the Financial Times, and I write about technology here in China. Over the past 24 hours, I've had a lot of engaging conversations and been at many insightful panels, and I'm very excited to be discussing artificial intelligence with the four great thinkers beside me. Everyone seems to agree that AI is the technology of the future, but what exactly it will look like still remains a bit unclear. For my part, I've started to use ChatGPT to write better sentences and pick some better synonyms. In the future, I'm sure it'll be writing articles better than me, though hopefully there will be a place for me in that system. Prior panels have dealt with how ready organizations are for the advent of the AI era. Now we are going to take this conversation one step further to the nation-state level. What should nations be doing about AI, and how can they ensure they aren't left behind? How should we regulate it, and how should we use AI to better provide services to people? How should we work to foster AI companies in an AI economy? At the same time, if one thing is clear, it's that AI is not going to be cheap. GPT-3 cost an estimated $10 million to train. GPT-4 probably cost $100 million. And when OpenAI gets around to it, GPT-5 is estimated to cost $1 billion to train. While this is great for NVIDIA, it's going to put self-developing large language models beyond the means of many companies and even countries. So countries may have to use open source models or partner with these big AI companies. These are some of the questions that we're going to get into with the panelists beside me. From Jordan, we have Ahmed Al-Hanandeh, Minister of Digital Economy and Entrepreneurship, who is leading the country's AI strategy and implementation plan. Next, we have John Lombard, CEO of NTT Data Asia Pacific, who is helping countries and companies think about their AI strategy. We also have Erica Kramer-Mumbala, an economy professor who has spent years studying entrepreneurship and innovation in Africa. And last but not least, we have Shui Lan, a dean at Tsinghua and a PhD in engineering and public policy, who is one of China's foremost thinkers on AI safety and is very involved in AI-related discussions here. Please help me in welcoming them to the stage. For my first question, I'm going to ask about the critical elements that countries need to have in place to get an AI economy starting. What do you think, Minister?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm so happy to be among this great group of people. To be honest, the critical elements when it comes to AI, first and the most important is the talents, the skills, and including the AI skills into the educational curriculum, where we have a future-ready graduates when it comes to this technology and so many other technologies that is within the ecosystem of the AI. Data is a critical element, accurate, sufficient, well-engineered data. Infrastructure is a critical element when it comes to connectivity, access to internet, or data infrastructure. One important topic and critical element is the governance of all these new technologies. Not only AI, we're talking about a whole new transformed world of everything is different, trade is different, jobs are different, economy is different, politics is different. The future citizen is a digital citizen, future economy is a digital economy. How are we gonna govern all this? What kind of policies, strategies, laws, regulations do we need to regulate, deregulate? How far we need to be neutral, not neutral? open for everything new or control it, the ethical use of these new technologies, what is going to secure the ethical framework of these technologies. So I believe another critical element, when it comes to digital economy, nobody can do it alone. You need your international cooperation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You need to open up for the what we call it the digital economy agreements.
Okay.
Cooperation, we complement each other. We don't need to reinvent the wheel in each and every economy. What we need to do is to build on what somebody else did, okay, to the best use of our nation, to the best use of our economy, to the best use of our region. I will stop here to, I'm sure my colleagues, they do have other elements to talk about.
Jordan has been very forward-thinking in crafting an AI strategy. And I know there's this 5-year plan that you all put forward last year.
Yeah.
And one of the possible hurdles that you all foresaw was the lack of AI talent. And Jordan's not a big country. So how have you found that to be a problem, and how have you been dealing with it?
I don't think it's the problem of Jordan. It's a global problem.
Okay.
Not only Jordan. Most of the countries globally is facing a skills gap. It's not educational. It's not knowledge. It's how much students are skillful enough to meet the demand of the very fast-growing technology.
Yeah.
This is why we're focusing so much into upskilling activities and bridging the gap when it comes to skills, cooperating with schools and universities, because educational system, it takes a long time for educational system to adapt to new things.
Yeah.
Changing curriculums at schools and universities is not something that they can do overnight. Yeah. And it's not a short-term thing. You need to upskill teachers, you need to upskill professors, you need to modernize your curriculum, and you need to change the way of educating your students. The whole educational process needs to change. And what we're trying to do as a government, we're trying to bridge this gap, working with universities. We did a curriculum from 7 to 12. We're launching it soon. Digital skills curriculum. We're training teachers at schools. We're working with universities with MOUs where we bring in international partners and stakeholders to do some gap bridging at universities. Most of our universities, they do have the new technologies within their curriculum. Most of the universities, they do have AI as a major in most of them. Data science, data analytics, UI, UX, coding, programming. So most of them are actually focusing on that. But the supply of skills is not meeting the demand.
Yeah.
Because the demand is growing much higher than the supply. Yeah. And this is why we do have after-graduate training programs as well. And we do supply-demand gap analysis at all times to see what kind of skills that we need to focus at, and we actually try to upskill as many people as possible. But we're lucky, Jordanians, they're adaptive usually to new technologies, so they do self-learning as well. And when it comes to AI, we have 19% of our ICT companies today in Jordan are actually specialized into AI.
Okay, great. Let's move on to Shreelan at the end over there. What are the critical elements that you think countries must have? China's doing a lot to foster an AI economy. Is there stuff that China's doing that could be used elsewhere?
Well, I think, first of all, thanks very much for inviting me to this panel. And I very much agree with the Minister about some of the key issues. Let me highlight a few more. I think the first is people. I think that, of course, when I say people, that people talk about AI talent, that's certainly important. But also, I think people who are willing to use the technology, and we know different countries may have different attitudes about using the AI technology. So I think people's mindset also is very important. So I think the first critical element is people. The second is research capabilities. Because AI is something that you need to do research about the technology, and you move in the forefront, and also you need to study how actually you can use the technology in your local context. So all of those require some research capability, either in media, in academia, or in business. And the third, I would say, is an ecosystem that's led by business. I think ultimately, I think the development and use of AI system, particularly for application to our daily life, you require companies they have to play the central role in that. And so I think that kind of ecosystem foster innovation, I think would be very useful. And finally, I have, as a professor on public policy, you have to have a proper governance. And here I think policies supporting AI development, application, but also regulating the risks, I think are critically important. So those at least are some of the key elements I would emphasize.
Great. Professor Mumbal, you're in Africa, many smaller countries. What do you think that countries there should be doing to get AI started locally?
Right. I hope that maybe in the conversation I have an opportunity to perhaps discuss more about the context of Africa, but I think context matters a lot in AI adoption and patterns, and although there are some general elements that I think need to be there, and I can't agree more with the previous presentations, submissions focusing on skills, the importance of governance, the importance of ethics are essential. In the African continent, there's a lot happening regarding AI adoption. There's a bustling AI ecosystem with many companies operating in that space. But this is not happening without challenges. And there is a skills gap, and computing capacity and skills are going to only become more and more relevant as the technology develops, right? Mobile penetration has increased a lot in the past decade or so, but there's still what we call a digital divide. Widespread access to the internet and electricity are still insufficient, and unless we address the digital divide, we are very likely to leave many behind in this AI movement. And I think another issue that I would like to discuss, and data has been mentioned earlier, is the issue of data sets. AI and large language models, they need vast amounts of data to make accurate predictions.
It needs a lot of different language data, which there's many different languages in Africa. So.
Exactly. So that is perhaps one of the contextual aspects in the African continent. And the data sets that we're currently utilizing are not contextual, and there's insufficient African data sets. And I think investing in systems for contextual data collection is one of the key elements and aspects that we need to focus on. Regulation and governance, I can't agree more. At the regional level, but at the national level, several African countries are developing AI strategies, which are very important to identify areas where AI can be leveraged. But also at the continental level, at the regional level, I think efforts are very important for coherence and alignment of national strategies. So at the African Union level, there has been a policy draft, a template that has been developed that is very useful for countries who are thinking of developing the national strategies and need a starting point that can be then utilized. And I think that is harmonization in terms of governance at the regional level is also a key element.
That's probably very helpful for all countries to have some sort of roadmap. John, what about you? AI is training a large language model being so costly. Are you recommending that companies in countries self-develop their own foundational models, or what are you telling boardrooms and officials as you
Yeah.
level around?
Yeah, well, I think we're all going to say the same thing around governance and ethics and all of those topics, because one of the biggest challenges organisations and governments face with AI is trust. So, you know, the latest analysis suggests that about 75% of people trust technology companies and only 30% of people trust AI. So the ability for governments and organisations to build these really strong governance frameworks to make sure people's privacy is protected, it's secure. We have really strong laws around protecting against deep fakes, and those types of things will be really important. But I guess just picking up on the point Erica made about you know, the need for these maybe more agile sort of local versions. One of the biggest challenges, of course, other than the trust topic, is the energy consumption that these large language models. A typical data set for one of the huge sort of generative AI technologies, it's estimated that to process one of those large data sets, it's the equivalent of 1 hour of a nuclear power plant dedicated. So you can imagine sort of that growing across the industry, and all organisations and governments utilising this technology is going to be a real challenge. So energy consumption and the efficient use of energy, particularly in, you know, I guess countries like South Africa, but many other countries in Asia Pacific, is going to be a big challenge. And it's organisations like NTT Data where we believe we need to be investing in that next wave of technology that drives down the cost of consumption.
So to drive down those costs, are you recommending smaller models, or how are you?
So we have developed a couple of technologies, if I can just quickly mention. So one of those is what we call innovative optical wireless network technology. So this is all photonic network technology in a data centre. And this technology significantly reduces the CO2 emissions by around 45%. A massive increase in bandwidth and a reduction in latency. We're talking 100 times and 100-fold reductions. So this is new technology in the data centre, but also in the chip. So I think this all-photonic network technology will be important. We've also developed a lightweight large language model called Suzumi, which effectively allows organisations, maybe countries have data sovereignty issues, or that, you know, it's for a specific set of data where they don't need all of the capability of these large language models. So, you know, we believe that these sort of constellations of some of these smaller lightweight models will be important, because ultimately the democratisation of AI is going to be important, so that everybody feels like they're getting the benefits, not just a few people in society.
Yeah, that makes sense. Professor Mbala, what about the energy problem that Africa is going to face, African countries are going to face in running these large language models? Is that going to be a big challenge, and how do you think countries can try to handle that?
Yes, I think that's a very important point about the huge amount of energy that is required for this AI transformation to take place, and take place at scale. Currently, I think less than 2% of data centers in the world are in Africa, but there is a massive investment and movement and expansion happening at the moment. So I think it's very important that going together with the insufficient energy access that we are experiencing, and the still early stages of renewable energy being used. I mean, we are still utilizing a small fraction of the massive capacity that the continent has to develop to work on with renewables. So thinking about this, what is called, I think in Europe, the twin transition, right? How do we bring together this massive investment in renewable energies, as well as coupling that with the developments in AI and the energy needs, I think is very important.
Great. And I know a lot of your research has been on innovation in Africa, and historically economists have thought that developing economies are not at the forefront of innovation. I think your research has shown that's not always the case. What are AI companies? Are AI companies starting to grow in Africa, or what are you seeing at the moment?
Yes, so I think I think somebody mentioned as well the importance of an AI ecosystem or an AI innovation system, however we would like to call it. But what I've been seeing and experiencing in the past, in the recent past, in the past couple of years, is that African businesses are embracing AI in quite unique ways. There is a really bustling AI ecosystem where you see a range of startups leveraging AI to address local challenges, and I think that is very interesting. You see anything from apps that are helping to detect diseases and pests in plants by scanning crops, for instance, to precision irrigation, to in the space of insurance, fintech is a clear space. But I think there is a massive movement that you see in terms of adoption. When you look at the scale and the magnitude, you see that we are still in a nascent stage. Yeah. And there is a lot of opportunity there, and you see large players, big tech playing a key driving role. You know, your Microsoft's, Google's, Huawei unveiled a major strategy and investment last year on 5G and supporting the African AI ecosystem. So, but I think what is very interesting is that you see a lot of grassroots African local businesses also leveraging AI and building local talent. And I think that combination of big tech and the presence of a sort of a bottom-up grassroots AI ecosystem it makes it a very interesting space. Great.
I guess one question that all countries are dealing with as well is regulation. How should they be regulating AI? The EU has a new regulation out. The US has an executive order. And let's see, China has probably pretty strict rules on needing approvals to release new large language models to the public. How is Jordan thinking about regulating AI?
I need to be honest. I'm a person who belongs to the private sector used by the government for a technical mission. I would say, if you ask me outside the government framework, I would say deregulate. You'll have to go on a new way of regulating things. In Jordan, we banned cryptocurrency. So we instructed banks not to deal with cryptocurrency, not to accept transfers to and from platforms dealing with cryptocurrency. And we have 200,000 Jordanians. They own cryptocurrency. When it comes to the new digital world and the new digital ecosystem, the new digital economy, dealing with the new digital citizen, I think the challenge of regulating or the answer to the question regulating is not a straightforward answer. Most of the countries have been trying to regulate e-commerce. Some countries, they went even to the level of they ban e-commerce. But e-commerce is growing.
Yeah.
Okay. A peer-to-peer economy is coming up to the surface. A peer-to-peer economy is an economy that you don't see within your regulation. Informal employment is becoming a major employment landscape. Smart transportation. In Jordan, the companies recruits directly 1,000 employees, offering an informal employment opportunity for more than 60,000 employees in Jordan. Digital assets, and how are we going to regulate digital assets? So at the end of the day, we try as much as we can to create awareness. The regulation, the new regulation is mainly to create awareness rather than a strict control of the whole ecosystem, because it's not easy You're talking about innovation, entrepreneurship, you're talking about digital economy, you're talking about shared economy, you're talking about all new schools of economy, and at the same time you want to practice what you have been practicing for the last 100 years of regulating every single aspect of business or every single aspect of detailed transaction in economy. It doesn't work. And the new world that we are looking at in the future, it doesn't work. So I think I don't have an answer, to be honest. What's the best regulation that you can implement? Okay. And even if you regulate, do you think if we regulate AI, for example, or if we put a code of ethics for AI, criminals will respect our regulation? People who wants to abuse it or use it for the wrong reason, they will actually go and check what is allowed and what's not allowed within that regulation. What we need to do is, as I said, one, create awareness. Second is train people how to be proactive, how to be responsive, how to take decision at a very critical times. Because a problem in a digital ecosystem is not as simple as an offline problem. Offline problem is an offline problem. You can deal with it. Within the digital economy and the digital ecosystem and digital infrastructure, speed is very important.
Okay, so for any entrepreneurs out there, it sounds like Jordan is a great place to start a company in favor of light regulation.
The most welcome.
Yeah. John,
Ryan, can I just pick up on what the Minister said? Because I think I agree. One of the most important topics, we talk a lot about technical skills and our universities teaching technical skills. I did a course at university a long time ago in Australia called Ethics in IT. And I think the ethical use of AI along with the technical use are equally important, because AI, as we all know, has got the ability to do so much good, but honestly it can do so much damage to societies. It doesn't matter which country we're from, it can have a terrible impact. Just think of some of the deep fakes and the scams online that are coming out at the moment. I'm sure we've all been hit by them. So I think ethical training for our students is critically important.
okay, that makes sense. Professor Shreelan, AI safety is one of your focuses. There are a lot of potential problems that are going to come out of AI with misinformation, etc. What do you think? How should countries be preparing for this, and what do you think is the right approach?
Well, I think that people already talked about, the AI can generate huge benefits, but also having various kinds of problems and risks. I think, different countries' situations might be different. So let me first, look at the China situation. I think China is actually facing three kinds of challenges in talking about regulating AIs. I think the first one is the so-called pacing problem. That is the technology moves much faster than your regulatory system changes. Many laws and regulations, it takes quite a long time to deliberate, to weigh costs and benefits. And so that takes a long time. But at the same time, the ChatGPT 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, is coming out very quickly. So this kind of chasing game is a challenge for the regulators. The second issue is what I call this kind of a regime complex issue. AI's impact in the society is multidimensional in almost every aspect. So there's no single regulatory agency is able to to regulate every aspect of it. So in China there's we have the cybersecurity administration, we have the the Ministry of Information and Industry, Ministry of Science and Technology. Each government agency is responsible for certain functions, which actually may be related to part of this regulation complex, but none of them are able to have overall responsibility. So I think that's sort of you're getting into a situation. How do you coordinate all of these efforts? The third issue is geopolitical dimension. I think in China's case, I think there's no secret. I think at this forum, people know that there's a kind of a U.S.-China tech rivalry. And so U.S. is trying every effort to stop China's AI development. So I think in a way that some people, company will say, okay, now we are having this competition. You're stopping regulation. You're stopping us from development. So that'd be too bad. So that argument is also, I think, having the regulators to have to consider. So those kind of challenges are the ones that you have to think about. I think currently the Chinese way of addressing this issue is, first of all, no matter whether it's geopolitical or whatever, AI's risk is real. And for a country to be able to promote its healthy development and application, you have to do whatever, no matter whether you have political, the geopolitical, competition or not. You have to do that. I mean, I hope that, of course, the U.S. will think the same way. So I think, and also there are common challenges that both U.S. and China have to work together to address. So I think that, so that should be put aside. The second thing is on the pacing problem. I think I studied public administration. So I think one thing that we've learned is that there are many cases that requires, your governance system to change, to innovate. And the one thing that's been called so-called the agile governance, that is really saying how actually your governance system can change over the time to try to catch up with the, the technology development. So you don't have to have a comprehensive law. So we are not able to do that in the short term. So let's have some more context-specific regulations. That's probably easier. And finally, on addressing the regime complex issue, is that actually we do not have a super agency to regulate AI, but we do have different government agencies. So they look at, in their particular context, if there's any problem, they come up with specific regulations. So in China, actually, in terms of application domain, there are many various, regulations and policies that really, address this specific problem. And hopefully, over the time, you can accumulate enough experience to have a broader context-based sort of regulation. So that's the approach. So more adaptive approach. That's what we're taking. Yeah.
Right. That makes sense. Professor Mbala, did you want to jump in?
Yes, I think it's a very important point that he's raised. You were talking about the importance of, because we usually talk about AI as a source of innovation, right? As innovation in businesses. But I think innovation in the space of policy is also very important. How do we innovate? How are you innovative in the space of policy? And I think the agility that Prof is asking for may come from thinking about more participatory, co-created, bottom-up. More than ever, we need private sector around the table, we need society, we need government, we need everybody around the table to really give that agility and that ongoing conversation that can help address the rapid changes that are happening in AI.
Just very quickly to support that. So at NTT Data, we set up the AI Advisory Board in, 2021. So, and that's got industry participants from the university sector, and the idea is to act as a bridge between industry and government to make sure that there's that constant dialogue between the two. I couldn't agree more with the comments. Yep.
Great. You're very much focused on the practical implementation of AI. What are companies and countries using AI for at the moment, and what are you telling them that, what is the possibility that you're laying out for them?
Endless possibilities, endless possibilities. So, I mean, we're seeing, and I was talking about this just a couple of months ago, and I said that a lot of the work that we were seeing was more proof of concept. We weren't seeing the larger scale deployments. But just to prove me wrong, and to show you how quickly this industry moves, I was at Changi Airport in Singapore yesterday, and they've just implemented the latest sort of AI imagery for security, advanced security and screening. I saw on the news this morning, and well done China, that you've just landed successfully the Changi 6 spacecraft on the dark side of the moon and returned it safely to Earth. So congratulations to everyone from China. And that was heavily utilising AI technology. But beyond that, I mean, we're working with the sorts of organisations that we're working with. So government very much using AI for better citizenry services. Public health and safety is a big focus in the public sector that we're seeing. Financial services, banks, probably the #1 adopters at the moment, banks and insurance companies. But followed quickly by manufacturers. So we're actually working with some manufacturing companies here in China on some really interesting AI-based solutions. So that's also another big area. And the other area is in healthcare. So better patient outcomes, rapid diagnosis. You know, we've done some work in India on screening thousands of cases for looking for tuberculosis, where normally it would take maybe hours or days to do the screening. We can do it, obviously instantaneously. So they're the sort of the major industries. But honestly, it's just touching everything at the moment, and it's really hard. I think the point was made earlier. It's really hard to keep up with the pace of movement in the industry. So many different players, everybody. It almost feels like, I'm in the tech industry. Every conference I go to, every company puts up a slide and says our #1 priority at the moment is AI. So it's a big topic at the moment.
Right. Yeah, definitely is. Everyone's talking about it. You are leading your 5-year plan. We're 1 year into it. How's it going? What practical applications of AI have we seen, and what maybe challenges have arisen so far that you may not have foreseen?
Yeah, it's true. Now we launched our AI strategy 1 year ago. It's a 5-year strategy. It focuses on 5 main pillars. One is building capacity and developing Jordanian skills when it comes to AI, encouraging the scientific research in cooperation with all stakeholders in the field, especially universities, promoting the investment, creating the right entrepreneurial ecosystem, creating the right incubation process for a strategic AI innovation that comes out from either entrepreneurs, universities, educational institutions, or even from government employees themselves. The legislative and regulatory environment that has to be supportive to the development and the adoption of new technologies in general. We want Jordan to be a technology neutral country. How can we use AI in improving the efficiency of public sector? That's on the side of the government. And the other side, we want Jordan has been the country of first in so many things when it comes to technology in the region, and fintech, edutech, health tech, e-commerce, Arabic content creation. We want them to be also leaders in the region and first and when it comes to AI. So we're trying to actually also incentivize, support the private sector, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, startup, SMEs, or even corporates, in going towards investing and incentivizing AI projects, plus helping them with, as a government, in opening up markets and access to bilateral agreements or regional agreements or global agreements that they can benefit from. We're into the implementation phase at the moment. It's 2 phases. One phase is raising awareness and upskilling, especially for the public sector at the moment. The second phase is we selected 12 priorities 12 priorities that includes health, transportation, digital government services, energy, water, agriculture, smart cities. Some of them will be low-hanging fruits that we're going to monetize and utilize, like especially on smart cities. We're not going to turn around the city into a very smart city, but we can use some AI tools to make the city as smart as possible in a very short period of time. When it comes to health, we're working on the data, and then once we monitor, once we manage to control the data properly, then we can at that time use the AI tools to enhance and improve the health sector efficiency in Jordan. I think taking into consideration it's a 1 year of a strategy implementation, I would say we were lucky to have a great support from Jordan private sector and Jordan entrepreneurs. We're way ahead of our KPIs and targeted objectives within our strategy. I would say we're gonna review this strategy next year to come up with a new 5-year strategy based on the results that we're achieving on the ground.
Got it. Well,
Thank
it sounds like you're making a lot of progress. I guess back to the AI safety question, Professor Shreelan. You were talking about the rivalry between the U.S. and China, and the U.S.'s efforts to slow China's AI development. Do you think there's still room for cooperation on AI safety, and what is the best, and how do you think stakeholders should be engaging with each other multilaterally? Should it be government to government, or scientist to scientist? How do you think countries should be advancing AI safety?
Well, I think there are ample opportunities for U.S. and China to work together on AI safety. I think first of all, I think that when we talk about the AI safety issue, probably the most challenging risk, people are talking about is so-called existential risk. That is sometime in the future there might be autonomous system that actually may no longer listen to us. And that's a kind of risk that people are very much concerned about. I think many of the technical people are beginning to think that there's indeed that possibility in the next some years. I think to develop some red line, to develop some guardrails, to make sure that that will not happen, is something that's of a common interest to all of us, both to the U.S. and to China. I think there's a lot of technical people who have already been in various forum, symposium, have a lot of discussion. And also I think the U.S.-China also has the dialogue. I think that's probably the number one priority issue, is how to prevent that from happening. So I think that's certainly one thing that's important. And the other things also, I think we have to pay huge respect to Dr. Kissinger, who actually last July came to visit China. And again, he was very much concerned about U.S.-China getting into a sort of AI arms race. So he basically literally talked to everyone he met at the time about the need for U.S.-China to have a dialogue about AI, how to control AI's risks in both in terms of the kind of existential risk I mentioned, but also how to prevent something like AI's military use. And so I think now that's why probably a very important reason why U.S.-China is engaged not only at official level, as we all know that on May the 14th there's a track 1 dialogue between U.S. and China on AI safety issue, but also there's a track 2 dialogue also as well in discussion. So I think all of these efforts are indeed exactly doing what you just said, that we try to work together to at least address this part of AI development and governance.
Well, that's great to hear. There's room for cooperation amidst the competition. What about inclusivity, making sure that nobody's left behind? What do you think Africa could do better on that front, Professor Mbala, to make sure that AI is not just this technology that's used in the developed world, in Africa and other developing countries don't have access?
Yes, I think putting AI at the service of inclusive development is clearly a priority that I think should be global, but particularly in regions where inequality is a major social problem and remains one. One of the things that I think it's important, and I mentioned it a bit briefly earlier, is about the diversity of languages, for instance. So Africa is one of the most diverse linguistically speaking region in the world. Over 2,000 languages. And then when we look at the variations and the different dialects, so then that adds up. Another layer of complexity is that many of the linguistic features in African languages are not recognized by Western languages. For instance, in South Africa, where I live and work, there's clicks in the language that are not recognized in Western languages. So there is an element where for instance, some African countries are already making an effort to try and address this in different ways, and South Africa is a case. And I think that requires quite a lot of partnerships and works and collaboration, particularly between government and academia, where government is funding large programs to try and capture, create these digital databases of languages, leveraging on the expertise that exists in universities in linguistics and data management, and try to do this in a way that making sure that the data sets, the databases that are feeding these large language models are inclusive of underrepresented languages, but that they also capture not only the language, but also the cultural nuances that exist in every language. And to do that, you need a lot of data on that, and you need a lot of efforts in particularly working between academia, government, and also communities, obviously, in making sure that those are produced.
That makes sense and is good to hear. John, do you have any added thoughts that you would want to add on?
No, I think that whole topic of the democratization of AI for everyone, for all communities, different language groups is really important. And I mentioned before the advancements and the investments that we're making as a company. I'm sure there are many other companies doing similar things, but yeah, couldn't agree more with the need for us to be conscious of that.
Okay, great. I think I've exhausted all my own questions, so let's turn it over to the audience and see if you all have more questions for our great panelists. Here in the front.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. Thanks very much for the panel. I am Carlos Calderon from Mexico. We just went through a difficult election process at our country, and we just choose the candidates who will represent us, at least for myself, at a state level, but also a presidential level. So I was wondering, with a country of 120 million people, with 40% of people lacking the basic computing skills, what would you recommend as academia, government, and private sector to do in the first 100 days? Because those are like one of the most important days, and we have 6 years after that to work on.
Great, thank you for that question. John, do you want to take that one? Mexico's first 100 days of government.
Wow, you've given me a big challenge, but thank you. So, look, I think, and it really came out in all of our responses, the most important thing for, I think, any government initially is getting that regulatory environment in place. And I know there's always challenges around how we do that, but the biggest challenge is trust. So regardless of whether people have got the skill or not, just the trust people have in AI is very low. Whether we want to acknowledge that or not, it's just a reality. People still imagine, you know, the Terminator 2 Judgment Day stuff happening to all of us. So really putting in a very strong framework that protects privacy, security, has laws, basic laws in place to prevent people from misrepresenting themselves using that technology, and then educating the community that, hey, you can, you know, we're educating, we're going to use this technology, but you can trust us because we've got the right laws and regulations in place. I think that's where I would certainly start in the first 100 days, if that makes sense.
What about you, Minister? This is something you've thought about.
And thank you very much for the question. I find it difficult to answer, to be honest, as being in the government these days. 100 days in the life of a country is a very short period of time. Actually, in 100 days, in private sector, when we wanted to do any strategy in the private sector, and we bring in the top consultants globally, it takes them 6 months to deliver a strategy for us. And 6 months is 180 days. And that's, you're talking about the big names, the people who have been doing strategies all their life. And they get paid for that. I think you need to go in 2 tracks. In 100 days, you need to evaluate the responses to the day-to-day challenges. How do they react? And you need to judge that. And give them some time to deliver a strategy, to deliver a vision, to deliver a plan that is time sensitive, a plan that has very clear objectives and KPIs to achieve. And it has to be an announced one. With the direction of His Majesty in Jordan, we have our economical vision 2031, and the public sector modernization plan. Both are published. You can access them on a public portal, and you can see the progress of each and every project. And we have a continuous follow-up on that. What did we do in the first 100 days? We were preparing that. But at the same time, we had to deal with Corona, we had to deal with lockdowns, we had to deal with health sector requirements. So people were judging us on our activities. But to judge a government the right way, you have to actually set the target and see if they can achieve the target or not.
Great, thank you. Do we have another question? Okay, here in the front.
Thank you, panelists. My name is Singh. I'm Indian. I work in Cambodia. Quick question. I've gone through all these ChatGPT and AI portals and apps. So do you think it will be an oversupply? Because right now it's 14,000 app on the app stores. So do you think, to be precise, 14,249 apps related to ChatGPT and AI. Do you think it will be a bubble burst again? Or are we prepared for that? Thank you very much.
Professor Srilan, do you want to answer that? I think China might have the greatest oversupply of AI companies. So what do you think? Are we in a bubble? Are there too many, or are all these needed?
Well, I think actually, certainly I think there are a lot of apps, I think, in China. But we know that actually the market, ways that you have competition. So I think over the time, it will drive out the weaker ones and the stronger ones will emerge. So I think that's probably the general way to deal with. But certainly I think, of course, you want to watch out. I mean, for those ones that's really, it's generating the negative externalities and so on. Those are you want to weed out as soon as possible. But actually, I wanted to get to the issue of the Mexico ones. You missed us. As a policymaker, I think this 100 days is so important. And so I would, have several suggestions. Given actually, I have no knowledge of, the current situation in Mexico. I would say first, start an AI college. I think with government support, training people is so important. You need to start as soon as possible. And the second one is that you want to have a round table with business people who have, who are doing work in AI-related field to get to know what is the status of your AI development in Mexico. And the third one is have a commission on AI, how to have a proper AI governance system. So those three things would be my advice. Okay.
Thanks. Professor Mbala, do you want to answer either of those, or we can go on to the next one?
I think they've covered it pretty
Okay.
well, yes.
Thank you very much for an exciting session. I'm Dr. Salwa Al-Hazza from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I'm involved with the women empowerment, and I'm really very proud to say that the Saudi woman has actually exceeded the G20, exceeded the UN Union, and the Silicon Valley. We've reached 36%. My question, I'm in the healthcare sector. We are innovators. My concern is that as innovators, our pace is much faster than the regulators and the policymakers. What are your suggestions? I mean, so many times I've had to cut corners, I've cut the red tape, I've taken risks because I need to move forward. I can't wait until a policy is made. But it seems that our innovation is much, much more faster than the regulators can keep up with. So what are your thoughts so that I can at least take it back to my country and say, let's try to do this? Thank you.
Professor Mbala, do you want to answer that one?
Yes, I think that is a universal challenge, and I think it's been mentioned by other panelists as well, how fast the pace is and the speed of the regulatory environment. I think there are different models that can be tried and tested, and we've talked earlier about the importance of innovating in the space of policy and how not be scared of being experimental is, for instance, policy sandboxes and including private sector voices, including civil society, including to address specific challenges, because you may find regulatory hurdles in very specific points. How did you start sort of drawing those pockets of regulation that need more experimental approaches to policy? And I think finding avenues to what are the amplifiers of your voice as an innovator in the space in which you are? Finding those avenues, finding ways to engage with policymakers and with decision makers, and urge them about the importance of being experimental, being co-creative, being participatory in discussing very specific issues that require unlocking.
Great, thanks for that, Minister. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, nothing much to add, but thank you very much for the question. We're so proud of all Saudi women and all what they have been achieving. Congratulate you and all your fellow women from Saudi Arabia. I think a shortcut answer for you is sandboxing, which we're trying to do in Jordan. Sandbox is actually the place where an innovative idea is presented, and if it makes sense, we allow them to operate till they're regulated. We launched our financial sandbox through central bank, and it's doing very well, and that supported actually the born of so many fintech companies in Jordan, where they operated without a license till their license is issued. Now we're doing a sandbox for the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem as a government, where we're going to lead as a Ministry of Digital Economy. I hope that we'll be able to control the reaction of all government entities, but we're trying to do that. And I know that in Saudi, actually, they're supporting innovation. They're not actually stopping it in any way. On the contrary, we see fast decisions in Saudi when it comes to regulating new technologies and new innovation. But I would say sandboxing is a short answer for your question. I hope.
Yeah, that's a great addition. I guess one last question we probably have time for here in the front.
Thank you. I'm a journalist from the Beijing News. I have a question about AI governance. We know that many countries and many international organizations are working on AI regulations and AI governance, but could there be a global AI governance body or AI governance agreement or something like that? And what will be the challenges to reach such a consensus? Thank you so much.
Professor Srilan is probably best placed to answer that one.
Yeah, I think indeed, I think this is really, I think there's a lot of effort. International organizations have been working on this issue, particularly, I think last year, I think the General Secretary Guterres appointed an AI advisory body and trying to look at this issue in a very comprehensive way and proposing what's the way to move forward. And also, you know, the General Secretary himself also mentioned about the possibility of an institution like, you know, IAEA and so on. And also some people talking about the potential, you know, IPCC model and so on. I think we'll have to wait for the final, report from the advisory body. But I think that whatever the outcome of that is, I think it's unlikely that we're going to have one single, you know, so UN or whatever global body that can govern every aspect of, you know, AI development and AI risks. Because people often think about atomic bombs, right? So IAEA and so on, we use that as an analogy. Unfortunately, AI is different. AI it's much more, you know, the impact is much more widespread, much long-term, and also much harder to monitor and to regulate. So I think that would have to be joint efforts of many different stakeholders, including international agencies, but also national government and business community and general public.
With that, I think we're out of time. I've learned a lot personally from the panel, what's going on with Jordan, what companies are doing, how we can increase AI for everybody, including in smaller countries, and how we can cooperate better. So please join me in thanking our panelists for sharing their insights.
Thank you. Good question.